Never a dull moment in the National Football League. Hello and welcome into First Take. Appreciate you joining us alongside Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith, both in the house today, which is wonderful. I'm Molly Kerman. Peanut Tillman, Charles Peanut Tillman, will join us at the desk later on. Good morning, gentlemen.
How you doing? I told him I couldn't do the handshake because I'm still sick.
We appreciate that.
That's right.
We'll get you a little sanitizer.
You came off as anything but sick during yesterday's show.
Oh, yeah.
I did what I had to do.
You did it.
Brought it.
We do appreciate it.
Point made. Yes, for sure. All right, let's get right into that controversial call at the end of Monday Night Football in Seattle where the Seahawks get a 3-point victory over the Lions. This is how the illegal bat rule works. It is an illegal bat if a player of either team bats or punches a loose ball that has touched the ground in any direction if it is in either end zone. It's a penalty if the foul is by the defense. It is an automatic first down. The penalty is not reviewable because it is a judgment call similar to pass interference. So another crazy ending, Skip, for the Seahawks.
Yep.
How bad is this for the NFL?
Stephen A. Smith and Molly, this was so bad to me when I saw it late last night that I immediately tweeted that for the NFL and for the Lions and their fans, this will be remembered as the bat out of hell play, bat out of hell play. And I'm going to stick with that today because after I slept on it, it's even worse than I first thought that it was. This is a terrible look for the NFL because remember, the Fail Mary play that happened in the same end zone, remember that?
Yeah.
Of course.
Was thanks to replacement refs. This was a real referee, and I'm going to use his name because we rarely call them out by name, named Greg Wilson, 8th-year veteran, back judge, with a perfect view of this play. Am I right? He's looking right down the line. He's got it nailed. So either number one, he decided on the spur of the moment that this wasn't a blatant enough tap out of bounds to warrant a game-deciding flag. Or number two, I'm just going to throw this out because it happens, they're human. Number two, Greg Wilson might have been slightly intimidated enough by the crazy crowd called the 12s, that is Seattle's crowd, that he started to go for it, flinched, and thought, I don't know if I can get away with that here in front of this crowd on this stage on Monday Night Football.
Okay.
Or number three, it's just possible that he didn't know or didn't remember a very obscure rule that rarely comes into play this way in this circumstance at this part of the field, which happened to be the end zone. But here's why Greg Wilson had to throw that flag. The ball, if you see on the replay, was bouncing slightly backward. It's an oblong ball. It takes odd bounces, as we know. So the trajectory is slightly backward toward KJ Wright as he runs toward it and then taps it out of bounds. That's big advantage to Seattle because, bear with me on this, what if he allows the ball to fall and bounce again? It could have bounced back into the end zone. And I'm going to remind everybody, it's a live football. It would be possible, it could even be probable, that somebody on the Lions would recover it in the end zone for a touchdown. That would certainly decide the game because Calvin Johnson almost did before Cam Chancellor, we'll talk about this in a minute, made a terrific, great play to knock it out of his hands. So the point here is the rule is in place to prevent exactly what KJ Wright got away with doing. He doesn't have to slug it out of bounds. He just tapped it out of bounds. That saved him from having to actually jump on the ball and recover it like a hand grenade in the end zone, right, to fall on top of it before a bunch of Lions fell on top of it. Now, the two people I blame, I do blame the Detroit coaching staff, not just Jim Caldwell, but all of the ones up in the press box. They should have raised holy heck immediately. They should have all thrown fits. You got to throw that flag at least to remind the head ref, Tony Correnti, and the other ones to look around and say, wait a second, maybe they should have, even though you can't review it because it's a judgment call, maybe they should at least get together at that point, but it would have to be sparked by the Detroit coaches to have a conference to say, did we get that right? Should we have looked at this a little differently? But in the end, I blamed this referee for blowing this game that could have sent Seattle all the way down to 1-3 and sent them on their way to Cincinnati next Sunday. 4-0 Cincinnati at 1-3. I think this referee, whether he didn't mean to, obviously, it wasn't intentional, he saved Seattle's season.
Let me say this to you, Skip Bayless. Absolutely correct. on the call. No question about it. I totally agree with you. It was a blown call on the part of the referee. You've got Rule 12, Section 4, Article 1 of the 2015 rule book, NFL rule book. It specifically states it is an illegal bat if A, any player bats or punches a loose ball in the field of play towards his opponent's goal line, which didn't apply here because it was in the end zone already, or B, any player bats or punches a loose ball that has touched the ground in any direction if it is in either end zone, which is applicable here.
It is.
The fact is, the rule states it clearly. It was in clear violation by K.J. Wright. It should have been called. The Detroit Lions should have had the ball on their half-yard line in position to win the game. No question about it. But I put an equal amount of onus because I do understand that human error is a part of the game.
All right.
But when you have Jim Caldwell and his entire coaching staff failing to raise holy hell and forcing the officials to literally mingle with one another, just get together and say, okay, let's look at this. Let's make sure of this here and discuss it. Even if it's obviously at the discretion of the official and it's not deemed quote unquote reviewable, the fact is you could get together, you could huddle together and make the correction because somebody can remind you of the rule that's in place. You're the back judge, you're supposed to know it, but somebody next to you or somebody in the vicinity may have known it and may have said, look, this is the rule, boom. But if you have no insistence on the part of the visiting team, and no one is raising holy hell, and that doesn't happen. Jim Caldwell, listen, despite the fact that Detroit is 0-4, they played hard most of this season. They've been highly competitive most of this season, okay? So obviously, with Ndamukong Suh being gone, the mystique of the team, and you clearly have lost something there. They are fighting. They are competing, and I give them a lot of credit. But this is one of those instances where, dare I say, the personality of Jim Caldwell actually worked against him.
It could.
You know how they say Joe Cool? Well, he's Jim Cool. And being Jim Cool and not being somebody who raises holy hell. Maybe that played a role in the officials feeling it relatively easy to shove him aside and say, this is our call, and that is it. And, from a basketball perspective, Skip, I remember years ago when Michael Jordan had retired, and Scottie Pippen and them came to Madison Square Garden, and the infamous Hugh Hollins, bogus call in favor of Hubert Davis. And Phil, it's hard to imagine he's got bad hips and, he can't even be on the side. Because that day, he jumped up and down and was spinning around and going crazy. Like, I can't believe how awful this call is. Guess what? To this very day, Skip, I am of the belief, as awful as that call was, if Phil Jackson didn't jump around hooting and hollering over how bogus that call was, I don't think we would remember it nearly as much as we do to this very day. It was because of his reaction. And I bring that up to juxtapose it to Jim Caldwell, and you're looking for fire and brimstone. This is a game on the line here. How the hell do you make this call? No, no, no. Raise holy hell. And he didn't do it. But in the end, here's what it comes down to more importantly. The officials, the coaches for Detroit, obviously all played a role. But the person who played the biggest role is a guy we once knew as Megatron. Because you can't lose that ball.
Well, that's a whole other issue. Yeah, but that's true.
You can't lose that ball in that particular situation. And it's the combination of all three things that lead us to this.
Okay, quick thought on that since you raised the issue. Do you blame Calvin or do you credit Cam for that play?
I credit Cam. I credit Cam more than I blame Calvin. But I guess the reason why I'm blaming Calvin to some degree, Skip, is because it was a relatively pedestrian performance by him. And as far as I'm concerned, an anemic performance by that offense. Skip, they didn't do anything. The defense set up every point they had for them last night. Well, scored one touchdown, and the field goal, you guys, the defense put you in position for that. Their offense did nothing last night. And the one time they did do something, about to finish off a 90-yard drive, that play happens. So, that was the only thing they did effective all night. And that was my problem.
Okay, I do not blame Megatron at all for that play because he's trying to make a hero play. He sees the goal line. He's got the ball in his left hand.
He didn't extend it?
But he's starting to. He's starting to extend
to
get the ball to the goal line. And he gets blindsided. He didn't see Cam come from his back blind side to knock the ball out.
Skip, you got time. You got time.
Okay,
it's not like this is the last play of the game. It's a minute 51 left. You got time, and if you protect the ball, especially against Seattle, they're piranhas. They are piranhas. They go after it. They didn't have one sack last night. Not one sack, Skip, and their defense was still hellacious. This is who they are. They're piranhas. They're all over you. You have to protect that football.
Okay, back to the Jim Caldwell issue. Should he have known? It sounded to me like in Pete Carroll's post-game press conference, he did not know the rule. It's possible because this is obscure. I've been watching this game for a long time, covering it for a long time. I can't ever remember this rule coming into play like that. So it's also possible that Jim Caldwell just wasn't aware of the rule.
That's fine. Yes. That's fine. It's also forgivable, but let's be clear. Skip Bayless is a journalist and a pundit and a commentator.
And this is
Jim Caldwell is the head coach. That's your job.
No, I know.
Now, don't get me wrong. I understand it. It's forgivable because it's an obscure play. You don't see that very often.
Okay.
Nevertheless, the great ones know. The great ones would know.
All right. Just to differentiate for our viewers.
And I'm not saying I don't know, because I don't know if Jim Caldwell doesn't know or not.
Okay, no, I don't either. But the only time I ever see this kind of rule come into play is usually when a punter muffs the snap near the goal line and it goes back in the end zone.
Right.
And you see the punter run after the ball. He doesn't bat it. He just kicks it out of bounds for a safety.
Yep.
Right?
Yes.
Go ahead.
But here's the flip side. That is even more of a reason why you should know the rule. Because if it's applicable to a punter, for example, or a kicker, then in some way, shape, form, or fashion, it may be applicable to
Okay, but here's the nuance.
You got to know that.
Okay, it's the punter's ball. He's in possession of the ball. It's your ball on offense, and you're going to punt it, and it's still in his possession, and he kicks it out the back end of the end zone, and it's a 2-point safety. Now, again, Jerry Austin was asked after the game, our ex-ref analyst on ESPN, okay, why doesn't a safety also carry the 5-yard penalty? Because it should be a penalty plus a safety. And I think if I understood Jerry right, that it's already penalty enough. You're going to lose 2 points, and you're going to have to punt the ball as a kickoff back to the other team. Okay, remember, in this case, it was different because it's nobody's ball. It's a loose football. It's actually Detroit's ball, and you're knocking it. It's still in Detroit's possession, and then the defense knocks it out of bounds.
Right.
So that's a different spin on the...
Yeah, it's slightly different, but remember, you said it's a live ball. So if it's a live ball, then it's anybody's.
Okay.
It's anybody's.
The last in the possession of Detroit. So the defense doesn't want anybody to recover it, so you just knock it out of bounds so that you end the play with a touchback, which would go out to the 20-yard line, which it did, as opposed to having to fall on the ball and control the ball in the end zone, which the rule forces you to do. You can't just knock it or kick it or whatever you want to do to get it out of bounds. You have to possess the ball in the end zone for you to take it back out to the 20. And this is too easy. And I know he didn't, like, punch the ball out of bounds. He just patty-caked the ball out of bounds, and maybe that fooled the referee, like, boy, that wasn't too blatant or egregious.
It was blatant.
Okay, but it is blatant. It is. You saved yourself having to recover the football.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bottom line, it was a bad call, and Seattle got lucky.
It was a bad
lucky.
Right.
Seattle got lucky.
Seattle got lucky, but Cam Chancellor, that wasn't a lucky play.
No, but we're going to get into that right now. So the